An OG from the early days of Medarot 1, who in earlier titles was more of a niche nuisance, but in modern titles became more of an absolute menace to society. It is EGT00 King Pharaoh, with a kit of Tornado, double Break Hammer, tank legs, and the leg ability of Desert type, which grants S rank to desert terrain, in addition to the leg standard matches. Now, for those that have played any of the early titles, or even some of the newer ones, King Pharaoh is someone you probably would already understand and recognize right from square one, especially if you played the Medarot 2 Core GBA game, or even the Metabots Infinity game on the Nintendo GameCube. This one will be very well known, but just a little bit of a change to its original song and dance compared to what it did before. Tornado is a shooting-based attribute skill that when used, when attacking the target, it will suspend them in the air, making them ineligible to dodge or defend, and in addition, while they are suspended in this cyclone, they are also weak to anti-air weakness. So anyone that is, say, using Shafu or Dorcas or Sonic Stack meta change, you can absolutely capitalize on this weakness very, very easily, or even if you don't, Tornado still is very good for even just minor stall tactics all around. Break Hammer is a gravity attribute skill and a melee one at that for its incredible versatility, and even though it may not deal a lot of damage at base, the charm ultimately lies in the fact of its gravity attribute, which means it is very good for one thing and one thing in particular: heavy punish. That means anyone that is using at least 2 or more heavy parts will be laying on the pain very, very hard, whereas if, say, anyone's using one or none heavy parts, the damage will be moderately negligible, if not somewhat mediocre. The tank legs do also grant King Pharaoh very balanced, very flat coverage across all terrains at B rank across the board, of course, with of course Cyber at S rank. But with it being tank-legged, it does mean that King Pharaoh is going to be packing a lot of HP, which means even if this chunky Sphinx type is relatively high on the armor, the extra defense is going to mean it's going to be even harder to take down and more of a pest than it was before. As a pure set score, I do honestly have to rate King Pharaoh pretty solid 6 out of 10. Break Hammer is a very openly welcome skill you can use more or less anywhere on any kind of particular team, go-to team, and it's always good to have at least one gravity attribute part on any competitively viable team, just so you can have that heavy punish just in case the opponent decides to use them. While Tornado may not be super useful on the field, and to a point it does kind of serve as a shortcoming for King Pharaoh, as he can't capitalize on his own created weakness with this, it means it's going to be nothing more than just a stall tactic, really. However, with his tank legs is where he particularly shines just a little bit more than the rest, given that Desert type means that in addition to the Cyber terrain, which everyone gets at S like I mentioned, Desert type will grant King Pharaoh S rank on Desert and Wasteland terrains, which means that while everyone else has to use either Flight Legs or Float Legs, and of course Flight Legs makes them weak to anti-air, King Pharaoh is able to tread through all that sandy terrain no problem and add a higher bonus than anyone else would on the field, even with tank legs having a relatively mediocre speed stat at best. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at a 7 out of 10. Given that King Pharaoh is pretty much a menace of heavy punish and stall tactics between Tornado and Break Hammer, one particular weakness of King Pharaoh I would also like to mention is that while he is good at dishing out the heavy punish, he also is subject to receiving it, as both his arms and his head are triple heavy, so anyone using gravity attribute on him will very easily shred through even that boosted defense that he has going for him. But if you are willing to overcome and compensate for the heavy limit of his arms and head, they can be very dangerous parts to use pretty much anywhere, and in the rare instance where you are on desert or wasteland terrain, I do honestly have to say King Pharaoh's legs are probably one of the much better ones to use, even if just a raise to have on hand.